Okay, I want to have a very real conversation about something that I think gets oversimplified constantly online, which is this idea of having a $30,000 destination wedding in Mexico, because that number gets thrown around sometimes as if it's extravagant, sometimes as if it should get you a full scale luxury production. And in my experience, neither of those interpretations are particularly accurate. So instead of giving you a quick checklist or a bullet point breakdown, I want to walk you through what that investment actually looks like in practice, what it feels like, who it's for, where the money goes, and why, quite honestly, I think it's one of the strongest value tiers in the destinations wedding space right now. When I talk about a $30,000 destination wedding, I'm usually talking about a guest count somewhere between 60 and 75 people. Typically, my couples have invited closer to 100 or 125, and that 60 to 75 range is a realistic attendance once you factor in work schedules and family logistics. Now, this is not an elopement. It's also not a 200-person production. It's not a celebrity luxury spectacle. It's a mid-size, thoughtfully hosted wedding weekend where the people attending are genuinely your core group. And I think that distinction matters because the guest psychology in a destination setting is very different than a local wedding. When approximately 65 guests land in Cancun for a wedding at this level, the experience begins immediately. They're not navigating airport transportation on their own. They're stepping into a pre-arranged private transfer that's typically structured into the room block. That's what I do. And that detail alone changes the tone of the weekend because it removes that friction. No one is stressed. No one is trying to coordinate rides. When they arrive at the resort, and I'm thinking specifically of like upper tier properties like UNICO or Hyatt Ziva Cancun, the arrival experience is intentional. There is a welcome drink. There's a cool towel. The lobby is open, expansive, and polished. You can see the ocean as soon as you walk in. There's a signature scent in the air. I usually love that citrus forward, clean, subtle, but noticeable. And it just feels curated. And that may sound small, but it sets a psychological tone. It signals to your guests that this weekend is elevated. Also, at this budget tier, you're going to see a mix of room categories among your guests. Some will choose the entry-level room. Often that's either tropical or ocean view, which I actually think is some of the smartest value categories in many resorts. Some will upgrade to swim ups or higher tier suites like ocean front. But what's important is that the base level room at these properties is still strong. It doesn't feel like a compromise. And that distinction is part of what you're paying for when you choose an upper tier resort versus the budget ones. Because at the budget level, you'll feel the gaps. At this level, you're not going to feel. Now, when we talk about 30,000 itself, I want to be very clear that I'm not referring only to the wedding package line item. I'm talking about the total wedding investment. At approximately 75 guests, that typically includes your ceremony venue, your cocktail hour, and your private reception structure. It includes your DJ and your dance floor. It includes upgraded arch florals, not like a full custom installation, but enough to elevate the ceremony visually. It includes your bridal bouquet and some personals. It includes full day photography, usually around 8 hours, often with 2 shooters, and maybe even some videography coverage for a highlight film. It includes hair and makeup for the bride. It includes your cake, premium liquor, maybe some champagne or tequila toast, a sound system, and coordination with a resort team. And often, either within the package or easily layered into it, is a welcome gathering the night before to kind of like break the ice. And this is also where I think people misunderstand destination wedding costs in Mexico. You're not paying for a 4-hour event. You're actually paying for a structured weekend. Your guests arrive on a Thursday or Friday. There's a welcome gathering that feels relaxed. It's not overproduced. It's not hyper formal. But it's intentional. It's like sundresses and linen shirts and a terrace or a beach area, past bites, drinks flowing, people meeting each other before the ceremony. And then on the wedding day, you typically see like a late afternoon or golden hour ceremony. And that's not accidental. The lighting is obviously better. The temperature is also better. And your guests have the entire day to relax, enjoy the pool, get ready slowly. And the ceremony feels calm. The cocktail hour kind of transitions seamlessly into the reception. the dance floor fills, and the following day there's often a shared pool experience or a farewell brunch at the buffet, or in some cases you'll have a private catamaran excursion if you'd like. And if you're sitting there trying to mentally run your own numbers right now, guest count, photography package, structure all of it, this is exactly why I created my destination wedding workbook. It walks you through how resorts structure their packages, how guest count actually impacts your budget, and where couples tend to underestimate costs. It's not fluffy, it's very practical. It's the same framework I use when I'm walking couples through real proposal. Now, occasionally at this investment level, couples will choose to layer in something experiential. And this is where I think a $30,000 destination weddings in Mexico really begins to distinguish itself from a traditional one-day event. For example, I've had couples add a private catamaran excursion either the day before or the day after the wedding, not because they had unlimited funds, but because they prioritize experience over excessive decor. And it becomes less about floral volume and more about like a shared memories. And guests jumping off the side of the boat, chips and guac circulating, drinks in hand, the sun kind of setting over the water. That kind of addition is not mandatory, of course, but it illustrates the flexibility within this budget tier. And you could choose where the emphasis goes. And that's an important point because at $30,000, you're making intentional trade-offs. You're not eliminating beauty. You're simply directing the investment towards what matters most to you. I also think it's really important to demystify where the money actually goes in a 75 guest destination wedding in Mexico, because there's often an assumption that the resort package is the majority of the cost. In reality, while the wedding package is foundational, a significant portion of the investment typically goes towards photography and videography. And I say that deliberately because documentation is one of the few elements that lasts beyond the weekend itself. So full day coverage, often with 2 photographers, sometimes drone footage, and a professional highlight film, that's a meaningful part of the budget. Another substantial component is guest count. Most packages include a base number of guests, and beyond that, you are paying per person. And at 75 guests, that per person extension does kind of become real. Then there's decor, not in the sense of building an entirely new structure, but in refining what the resort provides. For example, you might want to upgrade an arch. You want to adjust florals to feel less generic. You might want to enhance lighting, ensure the space feels cohesive rather than standard. None of that is excessive, but collectively it does add more depth. There's also a misconception that because the setting is all-inclusive, the wedding itself should somehow be dramatically discounted. And I want to gently challenge that idea. All-inclusive means that your guest accommodations, food, and beverage are structured within a comprehensive model. It does not mean the wedding is free. These resorts are operating at scale. Many of them have over 1,000 rooms. So even if you bring 50 rooms into the room block, that represents a very small fraction of their total inventory. So you're hosting an event within their ecosystem and underwriting their business model. So understanding that dynamic kind of helps set realistic expectations from the beginning. One of the reasons I appreciate the 30,000 tier so much is because it strikes a balance that I think is often overlooked. Ultra luxury weddings can be visually spectacular, but they can also become very production heavy. Budget weddings can absolutely be beautiful, but they often require tighter compromises. But at 30,000 for approximately 75 guests, you're positioned in what I would describe as a high value category. It feels refined, it feels intentional, it feels generous towards your guests. And the ceremony does not look sparse. The reception does not feel rushed. The experience does not feel stripped down. And importantly, your guests leave feeling that their travel investment was actually worth it. Now, I also pay attention to guest reactions because they are often the clearest measure of whether a wedding succeeded beyond aesthetics. What I want to hear after a wedding at this level is not commentary about centerpieces. I want to hear, that was the best wedding I've ever been to. I can't believe this was all inclusive. It felt like a vacation and a wedding. When are we all doing this again? That reaction tells me the couple struck the right balance between atmosphere and experience. Now, If we want to ground this discussion in specific properties, because I think it's helpful to attach reality to numbers, two examples come to mind immediately. Another property I love is Hyatt Ziva Cancun, particularly if you're considering a family-friendly guest list. The oceanfront gazebo provides visual impact before you even touch the decor, and the guest amenities are strong because you have the setting between two beaches. It gives you a very dynamic ceremony backdrop. And again, you're building upon an already solid foundation rather than compensating for deficiencies. We have UNICO 2087 Hotel Riviera Maya, which is adults only and particularly strong in food and beverage. So a $30,000 wedding for 75 guests feels cohesive and elevated without requiring extensive add-ons. The ceremony spaces, whether you choose the gazebo or the beach, kind of already carry like this architectural presence, and the cocktail hour flows naturally into the reception. The baseline aesthetic is strong, which means you are refining rather than reinventing. Now, when people search phrases like, how much does a destination wedding cost in Mexico? Or UNICO wedding costs, or Hyatt Ziva Cancun wedding costs, this is like the tier that most of my couples land in when they want quality without stepping into ultra luxury territory. So if you're researching a 75 guest destination wedding in Mexico and trying to understand whether 30,000 is realistic, the short answer is yes, at the right resort with thoughtful allocation. It will not be unlimited decor. It will not be a celebrity scale production, but it will be refined and cohesive and memorable. And if you want to break down your own numbers more specifically, I do have a destination wedding workbook that walks through guest count, structure, and budgeting in a more detailed way. And if you want to talk through your vision one-on-one, you can always schedule a consultation. And in the next video, I'm going to focus specifically on Costa Mujeres, which has quietly become, honestly, one of my favorite areas in Mexico for destination weddings. It's slightly more relaxed, slightly more refined, and in many cases offers exceptional value at the exact investment level. So if location is your next question, that's where we're heading. Cheers!